Today, we're going to talk about something called an open corner. We're going to talk about what it is and why it's important to always incorporate it into every single closed delta bank that we build. Let's get after it. So what is an open corner? Well, to better understand that, check this out. I've got a closed delta bank right here. So if you look here, I've got my 2 to 3 tie, my 4 to 5 tie, and my 1 to 6 tie. So this big long one is going all the way over, one all the way over, it's this one on top, all the way over to 6. And over here is where we're gonna find our open corner. So what this is, guys, if you look, I've got my number 6 bushing and my lead coming from my number 1 bushing. So my 1 to 6 tie, I've left it open right here. And if you look real close, see I've got the bushing tightened down on the insulation of this jumper right here. So when I come energized on my bank, when I close 1, 2, and 3, the very first check that I'm gonna make is right here with my voltmeter. I'm gonna phase across from my 6 bushing to my 1 tie. So my 6 to 1 connection, I'm leaving it open by tightening the 6 bushing down on the insulation, and I'm gonna measure with a voltmeter between my 6 bushing and this 1 bushing, right? So this is all the way connected over to the 1 bushing coming all the way over, right? This is my 1 to 6 tie. So I'm gonna measure right here, and what I'm actually doing is I'm gonna phase this connection right here. If everything in the transformer bank is built correctly, and what I mean by built correctly is my primary side is all being fed in the correct order, my secondary connection is all connected correctly, the polarity of each one of these transformers is correct, and the output voltage of each one of these transformers is correct. If all that is correct, this right here should phase in and be very close to 0 on a voltmeter. Meaning, I'm going to stick a voltmeter between this 6 and 1, and I should measure on the voltmeter something very close to 0. If I measure anything greater than that, and what I mean by greater than that, because they're going to measure a little bit of a difference, just due to the inductive value difference of these transformers. If I'm measuring like 240 or 480 or 120, something hard line, definite, something like an actual measured voltage that has something to do with the bank, there is something wrong here. And you're gonna find it right here at the open corner. So guys, the reason this is important to do is because if something is wrong, and this is tied in, and something's wrong with this bank, and you energize here, I'm telling you right now, you'd be lucky if these transformer cutouts come open. The secondary fault current on these transformers here, depending on KVA and impedance, is extremely high. And in a later video, we'll go over how to calculate fault current and everything. It's pretty shocking. Like everybody's real scared of primary because it's high voltage. I'm telling you right now, the secondary current in terms of fault current that these transformers can output is unbelievable. Thousands and thousands and thousands of amps. And typically what happens is hopefully the transformer cutouts are going to operate and protect you. But in worst case scenario, the tops of these cans are going to come off, and it's going to have burning oil, it's going to have all kinds of crap coming down on you. And God forbid you're on the pole in one of those types of fires, because you're not going to be able to outrun it. So that's why this open corner, this is something we need to do on every single closed delta bank that we build. And guys, you know me, to better understand exactly what I'm talking about here, we're going to run into the shop and we're going to vector the connection out, and we're going to show you exactly what can go wrong and where the voltage potentials will come from if there is a problem. And also, we're going to show you why, when you phase this in and you measure 0, why that is 0, like where that comes from. So guys, here we are, we're back in the shop, and I've got my 3 pieces of information up here. I've got my circuit voltage, I've got my nameplate information, and my customer's voltage needs, and I've got my transformer bank all over here ready to be vectored out. So what we're going to do here, guys, is we're going to vector this bank out. We're going to run through the whole vectoring process to show us what the connection is. And then we're going to back up and we're going to start running through little scenarios where the open corner would start showing us problems with the bank. In other words, we're going to show you exactly why the open corner is so important. Okay guys, so first things first, we're going to vector this bank out. And if you guys are unfamiliar with vectoring, I'm going to leave a link in the video right here that's going to link back to a vector lesson that I did that explains all this stuff. So starting off here guys, we've got our three pieces of information. Our circuit voltage is 13,200 grounded Y. And what that means, if just to review here a little bit, 13,200 is our phase-to-phase voltage of the circuit, and the grounded Y is the type of circuit that it is. So remember, it's always the two pieces of information: phase-to-phase potential of the circuit, type of circuit that it is. Next over here, we've got our nameplate. We've got 7630/13,200Y. That's our primary input. Secondary output is 120/240. And lastly, the customer needs, which is 120/240, three-phase 4-wire. So 3 phases and a neutral. So step 1 in this entire process, we have to determine the primary and secondary hookup. And the way that we do that on our primary hookup is we look at what voltage this transformer needs as a primary input. And remember, it's always the smaller voltage. When you get 2 voltages like this, it's always going to be the smaller voltage. So 7630 is the voltage it needs running through the primary coil in order to give you 120/240. So give me 7630, I will give you 120/240. So 7630 on this circuit, this is my 13,200 volt grounded Y circuit right here. So grounded Y, meaning the neutral is grounded. 13,200 is the phase-to-phase voltage. So phase-to-phase voltage, 13,200. Phase to neutral, 7630. So this transformer is going to be hooked up phase to neutral because that's where 7630 lives on this circuit. In other words, the primary connection is going to be a Y connection. Phase to neutral connection is known as a Y connection. Phase-to-phase connection is known as a delta connection. And the second part of this whole thing is to figure out our secondary connection. And remember, customer voltage needs always determines secondary connection, not the nameplate. Customer needs determines Y or delta. And the little hack, the little thing that we always remember is delta divide. And what I mean by that is it does 240 divide evenly by 120. Does the phase-to-phase voltage get divided evenly by the phase-to-neutral voltage? If the answer is yes, delta divides, it is going to be a delta connection. So here, 240 is divided evenly by 120. Therefore, the secondary connection is going to be a delta. So step number 1, remember, we determine our primary and secondary hookup. So here we're going to have a Y delta bank. Step number 2 is we're going to number our bank out from left to right on both our primary and secondary sides. So step number 3 is to now vector out our primary connection. So over here I'm going to take my 1-2 transformer. I'm going to put 1, feed 1 with A phase, 2 is going to go to my neutral. I'm going to take my 3-4 transformer, 3 is going to get fed by B, 4 is going to go to neutral. And lastly, my 5-6 transformer, I'm going to feed 5 with C phase, so 5 is going to go to C phase, 6 is going to go to neutral. So now all I have to do is hook up what I just vectored. So if I look at my vector, 1, 3, and 5 are each being fed by A, B, and C. 1 is being fed by A, 3 is being fed by B, and 5 is being fed by C. So let's go ahead and hook that up. So 1 is being fed by A, 3 by B, and 5 by C. 2, 4, and 6 all tie together right here. They all tie together, right? They're all touching. So 2, 4, and 6 are all tied together, touching, and they go to my circuit neutral. Let's hook that up. So in looking at my connection, I've got 1, 3, and 5 being fed by A, B, and C respectively. 2, 4, and 6 are all tied together, going to my circuit neutral. 1, 3, and 5 are all being fed by A, B, and C. I've got 2, 4, and 6 all tied together, going to my circuit neutral. So what I've just done in hooking up my 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6 transformers off of these phases, what I've done is I've created secondary phase angles that match the primary that's feeding them. Meaning, look, my 1, 2 transformer right here, straight up and down, 1 is on top, 2 is on bottom. My secondary phase angle is going to be the exact same as that. 1 is on top, 2 is on bottom. So 1 is over here, 2 is over here. When I make the connection, this is what bases what touches what, meaning like a 1 to 6 tie, 2 to 3 tie, 4 to 5 tie, all that stuff. This is where that comes from. So looking at my secondary connection, I've got a delta connection on my secondary side, right? So a triangle. So I have to take these 3 angles and build that type of shape out of them, or a triangle, or a delta, whatever the heck you want to call it. So guys, what I always like to do whenever I do these, it just helps me keep them clean, is wherever my straight up and down angle is, whether it be my 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, 6 transformer, I always like to start there because it always gives me kind of a point of reference to make my other 2 angles, well, I guess a lot cleaner. But anyway, just what I do. So, all right, so I'm going to take my 1, 2 transformer. Here's my secondary vector, right? So I've taken my 1, 2 transformer. 1 is on top, 2 is on bottom. Taken that and I've put it right there. So nextly, I'm going to take my 4, 3 transformer. So I've got my angle right here, 4, 3, 4 is on top. And again, what I mean by that is, here's my level line, right? If this was a level line, 4 would be on top of 3, just like 6 would be on top of 5. So that's always going to remain the same. So what I'm going to do, because I have to come over and I have to take that shape, or excuse me, I have to take that angle, I have to bring it over here and connect it somewhere to try to build a delta shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that line, I'm going to take it off there, 4's on this side, 3's on the bottom, right? 4's on top. I'm going to pick it up, and I have 2 different options of where I can put that. Remember, 4 is right here, 3 is on the bottom. I can put it right here, meaning a 4 to 1 tie, or I can put it down here, a 3 to 2 tie. And we'll go into the differences in these connections in a later video and everything, but if you do a 2 to 3 tie, it ends up coming out a lot cleaner. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to take my 4, 3 line, 4 is on top, 3 is on bottom. I'm going to put that one there. So that one's gone. And lastly, I've got my 5, 6 line over here. 6 is on top, 5 is on bottom. So 6 is on top, 5 is on bottom. Pick that up. I'm going to bring it over, and I'm going to lay it right here, right? So 6 is on top, 5 is on bottom. So if you look at our connection, I've got a 1 to 6 tie, I've got a 2 to 3 tie, and I've got a 4 to 5 tie. And the reason I can make all these connections and not have any fires or any difference of potential is because angularly, due to the primary angles that are feeding them, angularly I can lay these transformers in this configuration, 1 to 6, 2 to 3, 4 to 5, and if everything in my transformer bank is sound, meaning my actual coils aren't bucked or anything goofy going on internally, if everything's sound, when I check this connection, meaning if I leave this open corner, so open corner of the delta, right? The corner that we're talking about are the corners of the delta. So in talking about that, I can do this open corner at any one of these corners. I can do it at my 2 to 3 tie, 4 to 5 tie, or my 1 to 6 tie. It doesn't matter. The only reason that I do them at my 1 to 6 tie is it's kind of out of the way. I don't have to worry about really getting into any other phase or anything like that when I'm actually doing it in the field. So that's the reason that I do this at my 1 to 6. So the reason that 6 can actually be bolted to 1, even though they're two different transformers being fed by two different phases, is because angularly they are sitting in the same space, kind of like in time, I guess you might want to say. Angularly, they're projecting to the same exact point in space. So the difference in distance, meaning like, so what I say, like, you know, in the past videos, I've actually referred to voltage as inches. And the reason I do that comes down to these vector diagrams. So the distance between, or the voltage difference between this and this is 240 volts, right? Same here, like all the way around, right? So 240 volts, 240 volts, 240 volts. So there's a midpoint tap right here that's actually 120 volts, isn't there? Going both ways. So from this phase to over here to my X2 bushing, or my middle bushing, that's 120 volts, right? Same from this to my X2 bushing, 120 volts. All the way around, there's X2 bushings on all three of these transformers, right? So 120 volts, 120 volts, 120 volts, 120 volts. So when I refer to these voltages as inches, it helps to look at them like that, because angularly, if this is a 60-degree angle, 60-degree angle, and a 60-degree angle in my triangle, if this is 120 inches, this is 120 inches, this phase distance from my 4-5 all the way over here is actually not the same as this 120 inches, is it? It's actually going to be my wild leg, right? If I use that as my neutral on this bank, my 4 to 5 phase would be my wild leg. And that comes out to 208 inches or volts. So when I say that there's no difference of potential between 6 and 1, what I'm actually saying is that these two measurable points, so the difference in distance between 6 and 1, if I took a tape measure and measured from 6 to 1, I would measure 0 inches, because there's no difference. It's in the same dang point. So let's go ahead and hook up our bank here. After that, we're going to start running through some scenarios to where the open corner would actually find a problem in the bank. So if I'm looking at my connections, I've got a 1 to 6, a 2 to 3, and a 4 to 5 tie. So let's go ahead and do that. So I've got a 1 to 6, I've got a 2 to 3, and I've got a 4 to 5 tie. And for this bank, let's take our neutral off of our 3-4 transformer, meaning we're going to tap off our center bushing on our 3-4 transformer, and we'll make that we'll supply our customer neutral with that one. So coming over here, here's my 3-4 transformer. I'm going to pull my neutral and supply my customer neutral with that one. I need to pull 1, 2, 3 phases off of here, right? So I can pull either 4 or 5, tap off of that and bring a jumper down. 2 or 3, I can tap off of either one of those bushings and bring a jumper down. And then 1 or 6, I can tap off of either 1 or 6 and bring those jumpers down. So let's do that. So 2 or 3, I'm going to bring down 3, just because in the field, I'm going to end up saving a little bit of wire. 4, I'm going to bring that one down. And then in this case, I'm going to bring down my 1 bushing over here. And that one's going to end up being my wild leg, because if you remember, looking back over here, this distance is not 120 inches like it is here, right? 120 inches, 120 inches, phase to neutral, phase to neutral. But this 6 and 1 right here, both of those are a longer distance to the neutral. This is where that 208 wild leg comes from. So if you guys remember, over there on our transformer bank, I actually have my open corner right here. So my open corner is right here. And when I energize my bank, 1, 2, 3, I energize my bank, this is the first thing that I'm going to check. Because if this is wrong, there's no point in checking anything else. I need to figure this out and verify that this is correct before I can move on to anything else. So I walk over here, I measure from my 1 all the way over here, right? 1 comes all the way over here, and I'm measuring 1 to 6. So if everything is correct, I should measure 0, right? Because the difference in distance between 1 and 6 is 0. So if it phases 0, I can loosen up my 6 bushing, dump my 1 jumper into it, and move on. But what if we start measuring voltages that we can't account for? Here's what that would look like. So guys, here's a scenario where this open corner would save your butt. So let's say I've got my transformer bank all hooked up, but I didn't do any of my checks. I didn't polarity check anything out. I didn't use a tilt meter, none of that. And let's just say that this transformer right here, somebody had used it and put the secondary coils into parallel, or alley cat bad dog. And if you guys don't understand what I'm talking about here, I'm going to leave a link in the video right here that goes back to paralleling the secondary coils video or alley cat bad dog video that I did earlier. It'll explain it all. But getting back to it, so let's say you didn't do your transformer checks and somebody alley cat bad dogged this transformer and they used the outside or extreme terminals. The difference in potential between 5 and 6 would only be 120 volts. But you think that it's outputting 240 volts. So the open corner would end up finding that. And here's how it would find it, and here's what it would find. So here's my vector for exactly what's going on in this bank. So I've got 2 to 3 tie, I've got a 4 to 5 tie, and what I think is a 1 to 6 tie. In which I do have a 1 to 6 tie, but I don't have the correct voltage. So this 5 to 6 transformer, both my secondary coils that are 120 inches long are in parallel to each other. They're not in series like these two. These two cans, 4 to 3, has two 120 volt coils in series with each other. This transformer, 5-6 transformer, has two 120 coils in parallel with each other. But they did not utilize using the center bushing to alley cat bad dog this can like you're supposed to. So what they did is they used their outside extreme terminals, and now when you went and grabbed this transformer, you hooked it up just like you were supposed to hook it up, but luckily we left this open corner right here. So between my 1, remember this is my 1 bushing, right? Between 1 and 6, we are going to measure, here's 1, here's 6, here's my two 120 transformer coils in parallel with each other. There's 1 and there's 1. I think that it's stretched out all the way to here. I've got a jumper connecting 1 to 6. My voltage that I would measure at my open corner would be 120 volts because there's a 120 inch difference between my 6 bushing and my 1 bushing. So I would measure 120 volts there. So when I come over here, what I'm talking about is when I energize my transformer bank, 1, 2, 3, I energize it. My first check is going to be here at my open corner. What I would check here is between my one jumper and my 6 bushing. I would measure 120 volts in this scenario right here because there's a 120 inch difference vectorially between my 6 bushing and my 1 bushing. And if you find this, guys, I'm telling you, this open corner will save your freaking life. It'll save your eyebrows at least. And guys, here's another scenario. So let's say that you are under the impression that you have 3 additive transformers because of the primary input of this transformer and the kVA. So you think that you have 3 additive transformers. But in actuality, let's say the people that were making them this day, back at the factory or wherever the heck they're making them, let's say they had a bad day and tramped something internally that made the output actually subtractive on this transformer. So we think that we have a 5 to 6 tie going on here, or 5-6 bushings up here, but in actuality, they're tramped because of the polarity difference. So in actuality, we have a 6 to 5 over here. So let's see vectorially what we would find at our open corner. So here is our vector for this scenario. And in this scenario, we still have a 2 to 3 tie. We think we have a 4 to 5 tie, and we think that we have a 6 to 1 tie. But in actuality, what ends up happening because of that difference is 4 is actually tied to my 6 bushing. So 4 is actually tied to my 6. And my 5, luckily I've built in an open corner in this scenario, but is jumpered all the way around and it's tied to 1. So 5 is actually tied to 1, but luckily I've got an open corner. So when I measure from this point right here, from my 5 to my 1, what I would actually measure would be this distance right here, which is 240 inches or volts, and this distance right here, which is 240 inches or volts. So 240 inches, 240 inches, the distance between 5 and 1 would be 480 inches, or 480 volts difference of potential. So this open corner just saved our lives right here. When we checked right here, we found a difference of potential of 480 volts. That means there's something wrong and we need to back up, de-energize the bank, and try to figure out what the heck is going on. So guys, I hope this is making sense to you. What we're going to do right now is we're going to go outside, we're going to energize the bank, and we're going to run through the procedure of how to put a transformer bank into service and utilize our open corner. So here we are, here's our transformer bank. So to go over the connection, we've got all of our 2, 4, and 6 bushings on our primary side all tied together, and they're going to circuit neutral over here with the ability to float it. I've got my 1 bushing being fed by A, I've got 3 being fed by B, and 5 being fed by C. My secondary connection is my closed delta connection. I've got a 2 to 3 tie, I've got a 4 to 5 tie, and here is my 1 to 6 tie. So here's my 1 bushing tied all the way over here to my 6, and here I've got my open corner. Now on this bank, there's nothing wrong with these transformers. It's going to phase out. So it's going to be a little bit of a voltage. I think it's about 20 volts, but that's just due to how I'm actually having to make this 3-phase primary. So over here, guys, I'm just going to dry fire my bank. I do not have my secondary leads hooked up to my open wire, but I do have my secondary neutral tied down to my secondary neutral. So we're ready to come hot. So guys, I've just energized my bank, and the first check that I'm gonna make, again, is right here at my open corner. And I'm measuring about, what is that, about 17 volts. So for this deal, it's good enough I can close that. So got my secondary gloves on. What I can do is I can loosen this bushing just enough to be able to bring my connection in, being sure not to hit the case of the transformer. But once I do that, now I'm ready to go through my voltage and rotation checks and put this bank in service. So guys, remember, if you guys measure your open corner and you measure something like 480, 240, 120, something like that, what that means is that somewhere in this bank, there is something definitely wrong that you need to analyze and figure out. So at that point, what you're going to want to do is isolate each one of the transformers and start trying to figure out what the heck is going on. So guys, I hope you learned something today, and I hope this was a little bit of an eye-opener as to why we need to build an open corner into every single closed delta bank that we build. And as always, guys, if you have any questions, cares, comments, you can leave them below or get a hold of me, an email, whatever. Hey, stay safe, keep learning. I'll see you guys out there.